The Levi Watkins Learning Center was transformed in 2011 during its renovation and construction into what we call today a cultural learning place. The concept of a cultural learning place was envisioned with the redesign of the building to encompass new areas that incorporated the library, archives, and museum spaces together to reflect the university's cultural legacy and institutional memory. We created these learning spaces with the intent to transform our library from the traditional center of information to an expanded vision of a center of culture. The innovative design includes exhibit areas, displays, and spaces that create a user experience of discovery and engagement for our students that bridges the past with the future. Today's multimedia and digital Levi Watkins Learning Center at ASU is truly a cultural learning place that offers a unique concept among library renovation projects to teach the cultural heritage of our university. Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Janice Franklin, Dean of the Levi Watkins Learning Center and Project Director for the National Center for the Study of Civil Rights and African American Culture here at Alabama State University. At the center of all intellectual life and cultural activities is the Levi Watkins Learning Center, a cultural learning place. Our mission is to provide learning resources, facilities, services, and all types of materials that will assist your matriculation here at Alabama State University to our local, our academic, and our global communities. We are here to serve you. Welcome, the Levi Watkins Learning Center, the LWLC, a cultural learning place.
Hello, my name is Dr. Howard Robinson, and I am the University Archivist, and I teach at ASU in the History and Political Science Department. Today, I would like to take you on a tour of the exhibits at the Levi Watkins Learning Center on the campus of Alabama State University. Exhibits at the Levi Watkins Learning Center highlight events and individuals important to the 150-year history of Alabama State University. Located throughout the first floor of the Levi Watkins Learning Center are 500 square feet of museum-style and interactive displays, along with a 30-foot-long ASU timeline and two multimedia exhibits, one located at the entrance of the library and another located inside the iCafe. On the first floor of the library, permanent and rotating exhibits explore the origins of ASU and its development over time. Exhibits trace the role ASU played in the modern civil rights movement and identifies contributions made by Levi Watkins, the school's sixth president. In addition, exhibits at the entrance of the library highlight the Knight versus Alabama higher education desegregation case and how that case has expanded both the academic offerings at ASU and allowed the university to enhance its physical plan. Another first floor exhibit traces the establishment of the ASU Library and its growth over the years. Finally, the E.D. Nixon exhibit addresses the life of labor organizer and civil rights activist Edgar Daniel Nixon. As you walk into the library, one of the first exhibits you'll see celebrates the administration of Levi Watkins as the sixth president of Alabama State University from 1962 to 1981. This building was originally dedicated in the fall of 1978 in honor of President Levi Watkins. This engaging mixed media display recognizes the Watkins family and chronicles the Watkins administration during two critical decades in the university's development. The exhibit covers the volatile civil rights movement and highlights Watkins' successful efforts to establish an independent board of trustees. The Watkins exhibit explores President Levi Watkins' struggle to fend off attempts to merge ASU with other institutions of higher learning and highlights the university's transformation from a college to a university. The Levi Watkins exhibit also looks at athletic milestones during the Watkins administration, publications authored by Levi Watkins, and other depictions of this important period in the university's history. The Knight versus Alabama exhibition, 1981 to 2005. This recessed wall exhibit, located at the entrance of the LWLC, highlights the origins and development of the Knight versus Alabama higher education desegregation case. This exhibit introduces visitors to racially discriminatory conditions leading to the class action Knight versus Alabama lawsuit. The display then identifies litigation plaintiffs, including John Knight, an alumnus and then Director of Public Relations, Alma Freeman, another alumna, and Dean of the University College, along with 19 other plaintiffs. Defendants in the case are also identified. They include the State of Alabama, the University of Alabama, Auburn University, Troy State University, and the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. The exhibit explores the plaintiffs' attempt to challenge vestiges of historic and state-enforced racial segregation 25 years after the Supreme Court declared segregated education unconstitutional. The exhibit also illustrates how the plaintiffs successfully proved that the state of Alabama systematically underfunded its two historically black universities, Alabama State University and Alabama A&M University. History of the ASU Library. On the first floor, at the center of the LWLC, a recessed wall exhibit focuses on the 1921 origins of ASU's first library. The exhibit traces how the university library has evolved from the advent of the school's first librarian, Annie Doak, who worked out of Tullibody Hall, to Dr. Harry Robinson, who in 1972 integrated library resources and learning into one entity under the heading Learning and Resource Services. The exhibition identifies the different buildings that house the library over time, with images and artifacts from the 1940s, when the library was located in George Washington Trenum Hall, and where students used a card catalog to find books, until today, where students have access to an online public access catalog, OPAC, that not only allows students to locate books, but also provides access to full text monographs and articles, dozens of databases, and various types of audiovisual materials. Today, the Levi Watkins Learning Center is a modern 146,000 square foot, 5-floor cultural learning place with an array of accoutrements, a cafe, gardens, exhibitions, alongside computer labs, periodicals, and a video production suite. In 2000, Dr. Janice Franklin, Dean of the library, co-founded a consortium among the nation's academic libraries, known as the HBCU Library Alliance. This exhibit, in its totality, illustrates how the ASU Library has evolved and how it continues to work on the cutting edge of American librarianship. Historic timeline for Alabama State University. On the first floor, at the center of the Levi Watkins Learning Center, a 30-foot recessed wall exhibit uses images and text to not only explore the origins of Alabama State University, but to trace the pivotal individuals and signature events in ASU's 150-year history. The university's critical leaders are featured on the ASU timeline, while the various name changes undergone by the school are also identified. From the university's origins in the deep Alabama Black Belt, through obstacles that challenge the school's very existence, the ASU timeline sheds light on the removal of the school from Marion in Perry County, Alabama, to the state capital in Montgomery County, Alabama. The challenges faced by ASU's administrators did not stop when the school was reorganized in Montgomery. In the Alabama capital, lawsuits were filed to attack the school's public funding. Fires would ravage the school's infrastructure, and hostile legislators refused to adequately fund the school. Nevertheless, ASU persisted. Students, administrators, staff, and faculty began celebrating Founders Day in 1901. A school hymn was adopted in 1903. And by 1924, ASU celebrated its semi-centennial, the school's 50th anniversary. 3 years later, in 1927, ASU began offering classes both in Mobile and Birmingham. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, ASU struggled but found ways to continue its mission. President Harper Council Trenholm organized the Bama State Collegians as a traveling jazz ensemble dedicated to raising funds to cover the school's operating costs in the face of dwindling state support. For the next 3 decades, some of the nation's most celebrated jazz musicians, including trumpeter Erskine Hawkins, saxophonist Reuben Phillips, and pianist Jerome Hopkins, got their start with the ASU Jazz Band. The school continued to develop on the academic front, awarding its first Bachelor of Science degree in 1931. A robust campus culture also began to emerge with the establishment of Greek letter organizations beginning in 1936. The years after World War II, people at ASU continued to make their mark on American culture. Isaac Hathaway, known as the Dean of Negro Ceramics, became one of the most prolific and celebrated sculptors in America. In 1946, Hathaway designed a 50-cent coin in honor of Booker T. Washington. The United States Congress commissioned 5 million coins for circulation. 4 years later, in 1951, Congress ordered another 5 million coins, this time featuring both Washington and a separate coin in honor of George Washington Carver. At the very center of the civil rights movement, ASU students, professors, and alumni participated in some of the most iconic protests of the 1950s and 1960s. The ASU timeline identifies Professor Joanne Robinson and the Women's Political Council, highlighting their efforts to call for and help organize the Montgomery bus boycott. ASU students are also featured in the timeline for their involvement in the 1960 sit-ins at the Montgomery County Courthouse. 2 landmark cases grow out of the ASU student sit-ins. The timeline traces the role of students and alumni in the landmark First Amendment New York Times versus Sullivan case, where the United States Supreme Court ruling forced public officials to not only prove information about them was false, but in order to win a libel case, public officials had the much more difficult task of proving that news that was published about them was published with a reckless disregard for the truth or with actual malice. This ruling allowed the press to cover Southern officials and their treatment of civil rights activists without the news outlet having to fear being sued for libel. The second landmark case speaks directly to student rights. Attorney and ASU alumnus Fred Gray represented several students who had been expelled from ASU by the governor and the State Board of Education for the students' role in the 1960 Montgomery sit-ins. The students sued for reinstatement in St. John Dixon versus Alabama State Board of Education. In a precedent-setting decision, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals directed Alabama to reinstate the students. More importantly, the court decided that institutions of higher education could not act in locus parentis, or in the place of a parent, but had to afford due process rights to students. That is, the right to a hearing or the right to face your accuser before taking any punitive action against students. In 1965, ASU students participated in weeks of voting rights demonstrations. Some 800 students followed Reverend Richard Boone from ASU 2 miles across town, where they joined the Selma to Montgomery March. Boone was an ASU alumnus and field director for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Continued student activism on campus prompted members of the Ku Klux Klan to launch an intimidation campaign, part of which involved riding horseback in full regalia through ASU's campus. Other developments addressed on the ASU timeline reflect the aftermath of the civil rights movement, including the first white student to graduate from ASU in 1970, or in 1973, when the president, Levi Watkins, was held hostage by a disgruntled faculty member. The timeline also features the 1976 Craig versus ASU case, where several of the university's white employees alleged racial discrimination, as well as the 1995 ruling in the Knight versus Alabama higher education desegregation case. When ASU won this litigation, it allowed the university to expand its mission, giving ASU PhD granting authority and allowing for new programs in allied health, accountancy, and microbiology. This ruling led to an increase in state funding, with $125 million earmarked for ASU construction projects. The ASU timeline also addresses other exciting developments. The school's bicentennial celebration saw a time capsule buried at the center of the University Mall on August 18, 1974. The capsule, with its 121 historic artifacts, is supposed to be opened during a ceremony in 2024. The university exposed South Central Alabama to the dynamic jazz format when it opened WVAS-FM radio station in June of 1984. Also in 1984, the Golden Ambassadors were organized, allowing ASU students to serve as official hosts and hostesses for the university both on and off campus. In 1998, part of the ASU campus known as the Historic District was added to the National Register of Historic Places. In 2003, ASU won approval to offer the Doctor of Philosophy degree in microbiology by the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. The timeline also reflects ASU's long-standing tradition as a school for educators. In 2005, ASU graduated more African Americans with baccalaureate degrees in education than any other four-year college or university in the nation. Student protests did not end in the 1960s. The ASU timeline addresses demonstrations on campus in 1992, when ASU students staged a successful four-day protest over increased parking fees and other student concerns. In February of 2004, some 700 ASU students appealed to the president and the board of trustees by standing silently both inside and outside of the Acadome concourse as they called for improvements in the university's dormitories. On November 4th, 2008, students gathered for a different show of force. They came together in the Fred Shuttlesworth Dining Hall to collectively watch election returns, which saw Barack Obama become the first African American to serve as President of the United States of America. A number of other milestones are chronicled on the timeline. In 2011, ASU was chosen as the site of the Montgomery Interpretive Center for the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail. This 10,000 square foot National Park Service facility is now open to the public. On Thanksgiving Day, 2012, ASU inaugurated its football stadium. This 26,500-seat facility opened with the Turkey Day Classic game between Alabama State University and Tuskegee University. The timeline tells the story of ASU beyond 2012 through this interactive monitor. ASU and the modern civil rights movement. On the first floor of the Levi Watkins Learning Center, at the entrance of the special collections, is the 2,000 square foot Civil Rights Interactive Exhibition. The exhibits in this room focus on two phases of the civil rights movement: efforts to desegregate public transportation and student activism in the early 1960s. In this space, photographs, video, and artifacts are used to tell the story of the ASU and its role in the modern civil rights movement. The exhibits draw on hundreds of photographs, electronic interactive stations, and several electronic timelines, all employed to identify the role that ASU students, faculty, and administrators played in fighting against racial discrimination. In a freestanding exhibit, particular attention is focused on ASU-based Women's Political Council, with an emphasis on the organization's role in calling for a boycott of the Montgomery buses. Another freestanding exhibit highlights ASU's connection to the Montgomery Improvement Association and how ASU alumni, faculty, and students work with this organization to successfully execute the 362-day Montgomery bus boycott. Exhibits also shed light on Alabama State students and their role in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Presentations cover student participation in the sit-in movement, student efforts to desegregate public libraries, and student involvement in the voting rights campaign, as well as student efforts to challenge racial discrimination downtown Montgomery. This exhibit also pays homage to 3 ASU graduates who were giants in the civil rights movement. They are Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, Attorney Fred David Gray, and Reverend Fred Lee Shuttlesworth. The Civil Rights Interactive Space features several interactive monitors that allow visitors to take a 1965 literacy test or to watch important civil rights figures talk about their experiences.
Hi, and welcome to the Special Collections Department of the Levi Watkins Learning Center, located on the first floor. My name is Reagan Stearns. I'm the Associate Archivist and Special Collections Librarian. Special Collections has a unique assortment of material pertaining to Black life and history. Our largest collection is our books collection, which are both non-circulating, meaning you have to use it here in the library, or circulating, meaning you can take it with you. Special Collections also has a large collection of periodicals pertaining to Black life and history. We have newspapers, local and national. We have academic journals, and we also have popular magazines. For those who are interested in history, we have older newspapers on microfilm that you can read in our microfilm reader here in Special Collections. We have theses and dissertations written by members of the ASU community. And for those who are interested in the history of Alabama State University, we have older yearbooks that you can check out here in the library too. Special Collections also has book displays and exhibits, as well as hosts special events such as book talks. We hope to see you here. Please stop by.
The Edgar Daniel Nixon Museum. This 300 square foot space, located in Special Collections, is dedicated to the life and contributions of E.D. Nixon. The Nixon exhibit, rich in artifacts and memorabilia, looks at the extraordinary contributions E.D. Nixon made over a 60-year career as a union organizer, as a political and community activist, and his work in the civil rights movement. The exhibit focuses particular attention on how Nixon helped to establish the Montgomery Improvement Association and how he served as treasurer of this critical bus boycott organization. The exhibit sheds light on the Nixon family, and it looks at Nixon as a union man and local head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The exhibition also covers Nixon's work in the field of politics, including his attempt to win election to the Montgomery County Democratic Committee in 1954, or his unsuccessful 1968 run for Congress. Artifacts in this space speaks to Nixon's impressive work with a number of community-based organizations, his membership with the Elks, his efforts to start the Summer Olympics, and his work in the Young Fort Village housing project.